I think my neighbor is a time traveler. Okay, so I've been sitting on this for weeks, and I'm finally at the point where I just need to get it out. Maybe it's nothing, or maybe I'm losing my mind, but I'm starting to think my neighbor is a legit time traveler. I know it sounds crazy, but let me explain. I live in a pretty ordinary apartment complex in a mid-sized city. You know, the kind with beige walls, thin carpets, and the occasional annoying dog barking through the walls. I've lived here for about 3 years now, and while most of my neighbors come and go, there's this one guy who's been here since day one. Let's call him Ethan. Ethan is strange. Not serial killer vibes, strange, but just off. He keeps to himself, which is fine, but he's always dressed like he walked straight out of a 1940s movie. I'm talking about three-piece suits, perfectly shined shoes, and even a freaking pocket watch. I think my neighbor is a time traveler. The first time I really noticed him was a couple of months after I moved in. I was taking out the trash and he was walking to his car, an old, pristine black Cadillac, like something out of a noir film. I remember thinking, wow, that guy is dedicated to his aesthetic. We exchanged polite nods, but something about him felt off. It was like he didn't belong, like he was too stiff, too formal, and way too calm. Over the next few months, I started to notice weirder things. I'd see him leave for work at odd hours, sometimes in the middle of the night, sometimes super early in the morning. He never seemed to age, which isn't that strange, but he just had this unchanging look about him. His clothes were always immaculate, and his hair was perfectly slicked back, no matter the weather. It was like time didn't touch him. I think my neighbor is a time traveler. Then came the really weird part. About 6 months ago, we got a new neighbor, a young woman named Lily. She moved into the unit directly across from Ethan. She and I got to talking one day, and she mentioned something that made my stomach drop. She said, "That guy across the hall, Ethan, right? He used to live next to my grandma when she was my age." I laughed at first, thinking she was joking, but she wasn't. She was dead serious. Her grandma apparently lived in a different city, but she swore up and down that the guy looked exactly the same as when she was young. Same clothes, same car, same everything. Lily thought maybe it was just a coincidence, that maybe Ethan was the son or grandson of her grandma's neighbor. But still, it was weird. I think my neighbor is a time traveler. I started paying more attention to Ethan after that. I'd see him around, always looking exactly the same, and my curiosity grew. One night, I was coming home late from work, and I saw him standing by his car, staring up at the sky. I don't know what possessed me, but I walked up to him and said, "Hey, Ethan, you doing okay?" He turned to me with this faraway look in his eyes, and for a second, I swear I saw something flicker in his expression, like he was confused. But then he smiled politely and said, "Yes, of course. Just admiring the stars." That would have been the end of it. But a few days later, I noticed something. His car. It wasn't just old. It looked brand new, like fresh off the lot new. That Cadillac he drove, it was a model from the 1950s, and yet it had no wear and tear, no rust, no scratches, nothing. And I know cars like that don't just stay in mint condition forever, no matter how well you take care of them. I think my neighbor is a time traveler. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off, so I started doing a little digging. I Googled his car's make and model, and get this, the license plate was from the 1950s too. But here's the kicker. The plate hadn't been registered in decades. It's like it didn't exist in any current database. By this point, I was spiraling. I started keeping tabs on when he came and went, and I noticed a pattern. Every few weeks, Ethan would disappear for a couple of days. No car in the parking lot, no lights on in his apartment. And then, just as suddenly, he'd be back, like nothing happened. One night, I saw him leaving around 2 a.m. carrying an old suitcase. I tried to follow him, but I lost him after a few blocks. I have no idea where he went, but when I came back to the building, there was something strange about his apartment. The windows were slightly open, and I could hear this weird humming noise coming from inside. It sounded almost mechanical.